Good morning.
Hi, Lori. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well.
Good. We're so excited. I've been a fan for a long time.
Oh, you're sweet. That's so odd when people say that to me. I'm going to tell my husband I have fans.
Yes.
He'll laugh.
Yes. Me too.
My kids will find that very entertaining.
How old are your kids?
I have a 21-year-old and a 25-year-old.
That's right. Yeah. And you're feeling good these days?
I am. I'm feeling a lot better. Thanks for asking. It was a
Good.
very scary fall.
Yes. Yes. It sounded like put you out of commission. And when your work is just you.
Yeah, I'm actually an instructional designer. I work full-time for Damon University.
Oh, I didn't
In
know
that role. Yeah. And they allow me to consult as much as I want, it's really lovely because, for instance, I had this incredibly overwhelming project at the university for the last month. I was designing syllabi for 160 dental school courses.
Dental school courses.
Yeah. It was an emergency project that was put on our plate 6 weeks ago. And as you might imagine, being able to step away from that to do the work that I love like this, it was really wonderful. It's nice to have variety.
So you're helping them with the tech side of their course? What does that mean, designing syllabi?
Yeah, so we're launching a dental school and we need to get accreditation from the New York State Department of Education. And part of the accreditation process means that we have to have courses that are aligned to the code of competencies for dental schools. Yeah. And so I had to design those syllabi and align them appropriately to submit them for accreditation.
Wow.
Yeah,
that sounds exciting.
Yeah, I have so many dental school textbooks in my house right now, and I know more than I ever thought I would about the pulp of our teeth.
Wow. Yeah, that's funny. When I grew up in Ohio and did my graduate work at Ohio State, and when we graduated, the dental school sat right behind us. I mean, I don't know what that made me think of that, but because only
that's a gorgeous campus. I've been there a couple of times. My daughter's best friend goes there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, parts of it are gorgeous, but it's just been a sprawl.
Has it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the largest land grant university in the country, and
I did not know that.
Yes, lots and lots of students. But yes, it was a great experience. But I didn't go undergrad there because as an undergrad, it's like, oh, it's a big factory and, you know, everybody goes there. And then I realized it's got one of the top graduate schools in education. Maybe you want to rethink that. And now I'm very proud to be an alum. And there's actually a group out here in California that gets together for I mean, I haven't done it, but you know, all the sports.
Yeah, but that's really nice.
Yeah, it is.
Great.
So
would you mind if I tested my audio?
Go right ahead.
Playing music, and I want to make sure that everybody can hear it okay. So I'm going to start.
And when people pop on, I can play some background music too.
I have some.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I'm just going to
see. And I will tell.
Works.
Yeah. Perfect.
Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Loud and clear. Yeah.
Then I just want to try. There's a video.
Okay.
The ancient Greeks had 4 words.
Okay, and then
sound is good.
The ancient Greeks had 4 words for love.
You know how to get the sound to come out of the right place so that it's clear.
I practiced.
Yeah.
And then there's just one more slide at the end. It's an audio file of a child speaking, and there's a little bit of a lag at the beginning. So I'm going to fast forward it just.
It was a skinny thing with almost no meat on a scrawny little bone.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay,
Love
perfect.
those little voices.
This is the thing I've worried about the most all week.
It sounds great.
All right, perfect.
Loud and clear. I have not sent out your digital swag bag.
That's okay. I can drop a link into the chat.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can drop a link at the beginning and I'll do it. I was trying to think if we should do it at the beginning or at the end or in the middle.
You'll want to do it at the beginning because there are things in there that I'm going to walk them through that they'll want for the session in order to get the most out of it.
I will put it in. I'll do my introduction and then I'll put it in. my support is celebrating Persian New Year, and she yesterday took off, and she's the one that has the list. So, and I tried to just reply to all, but she's got one of those where it hides all the names.
It's not a big deal. I'm
So
pretty much used to, I mean, I'm grateful that you're here and supporting me in this way, because usually I'm doing this on my own.
oh, gee.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever you need, and I have an introduction, and I'll share my screen at the beginning, and then I'll put the link in a couple times, because, people don't all come in right at the beginning. But let me find yeah. So here is my, and I can't wait for your new book.
Yes, and I'm so excited because we just finished the elementary version this week.
Oh.
So there's one for 612 and one for K5.
Oh,
And
good.
it was so interesting because I worked with I have the same editor. I've always had the same editor at Routledge, Lauren Davis, who is amazing. She's so friendly and approachable, and she responds to me in 24 hours. And I don't know anyone who does that.
Yeah.
But every single time I publish with them, they have different copy editors that I work with. So the 612 book is almost identical to the K5, only all of the examples and stories are grade level appropriate. But the resources and tools are exactly the same. And it was a completely different set of feedback and expectations and requirements for the second book. So it took a lot longer, even though, they were saying like images were not high enough resolution, but they were the same images that were in the K5 book. So now I'm worried that something's going to come out on one end with not good resolution, but I'm pretty sure they're professionals who will fix that.
Yeah, Chris and I are working on a book with Routledge.
Are you?
Yes, and you maybe you haven't done this, but we've postponed the deadline twice.
Have you? I had to postpone it once because I got sick. And I tried really
I remember
hard.
you writing about that. Yeah.
But I couldn't, and they were wonderful. I think they expect that to some degree.
Yeah, I think so too. And, we got the contract before the pandemic, and it was due anyway, it was just nuts.
It's and was what I said to Lauren, like my entire world has changed with this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I don't know that extending it has helped at all, because we both should have just taken sabbatical and written it. It's,
what are you writing about?
Well, it's I should know the title off the top of my head. It's kind of related, and it's about creativity, innovation, and the arts in literacy.
Well, I hope that when it comes out, you'll tag me or message me or something.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
love to share it, and I'll give away copies in my newsletter, because I do that whenever friends have
fabulous.
That come
Yeah,
out.
we're thinking it's more we're thinking of a teacher ed audience, new teachers, but I direct a writing project, and I'm also thinking of them and new teachers. And
I teach 4 different courses in our graduate school or in our undergraduate school at Damon. So I teach assessment methods. And we're spending a lot of time talking about how we might invite more creative expression inside of assessment. So that would be a really good fit.
We have a chapter on assessment, but yes. And I'm on the writing chapter right now, writing about multimodal composition. And
I'm so excited.
But yeah, it's exciting because she's done a lot more. Her research is in design thinking, and she's got a big project in podcasting right now. And I'm more old school literacy, but trying to keep up with.
I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
That's really what's happened.
Yes.
That's the trajectory of my life too.
New literacies. Yeah, but it's exciting. I mean,
it is. And I feel so fortunate to be hitting this moment in my life with these conversations going on, because there's no way that I'm ever going to be burned out.
Right.
I think someone's going to have to chain me to a chair to make me retire at this point.
That's a good way to be. Yeah.
It is.
Currently, I'm the director of the school, which I am thinking of as a service, because I love teaching and I love writing and working with teachers and new teachers. And this is just like being an assistant principal. You know, it's all the
Yeah, that's rough.
stupid stuff, but that's okay. It's, you know, how can I make my colleagues' lives a little easier and advocate for students?
Well, and it's probably, while it might not be the most rewarding work, I'm sure it's incredibly meaningful work and purposeful work, so.
I try to see it that way. Yeah. And, you know, in California, I don't know if it must be this way in New York, there's lots of money coming toward teacher ed and trying to get, you know, more teachers and
Right.
in innovative ways. So that's good. You know, could be the opposite.
It is.
Welcome. I see we have some folks joining us early. Good for you. So we have a lot of folks in our credential program, and hopefully, I think we have some writing project teachers.
Welcome,
Have a
everybody.
good mixed audience. Some of our faculty usually join. Hi, Alyssa. Hi, Gwen. Hope your semester's going well. We're coming up on spring break for the campus, Angela, but the teacher candidates follow their school's break. So it'll be from now until
It's our
Easter.
spring break right now. We're just winding up. It was this week.
Yeah. You
Hi,
know,
everybody.
Chico's spring break is always St. Patrick's Day because they have such a problem with the drinking. They just decided, we're just going to take spring break during St. Patrick's Day rather than fight it.
Rather than deal with it twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Cross
Good
your
morning.
fingers and hold your breath.
Good to see you all here. Hope you're hanging in there.
Hi, everyone.
You want to put any music on, or do you want me to put some music
Yeah,
on?
I can start to
Okay.
play mine if you would
Yeah,
like.
in just a couple minutes, I'll do introductions and welcomes.
Great. Can I share my screen really quick in order to
Sure.
do that?
Yeah.
Great. Thank
Of course, if
you.
I'm on Zoom, my cats think it means, hey, it's time for us to sit with you. How are the dogs doing?
Mine,
Yeah,
they're in the garage right now, right over there with my
Uh-huh.
husband.
they're adorable.
They've been banished from the house.
Oh. Have they been bad, or just when you are speaking, they can't be around?
Oop, sorry. Is the music too loud?
Can't hear it.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah,
All right. Is it too loud?
no, can
All
barely hear
right,
it.
good. I'll keep
will-
playing it then.
Can barely hear it. Do you guys hear it? No,
Pardon me?
we don't really hear it.
Can you hear it now?
Barely. It's really faint in the background. You're all, after we just did that test, don't panic.
It's my fault because when I went to share my screen, I have to share
Not
this.
sharing.
now. Yeah, I'm resharing so that it works. Sorry. Here we go, everybody. You should be.
Here we go.
Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Shutterstock Music. Shutterstock Music.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to break the music up for a minute to let you know that I dropped a link to a swag bag full of materials into the chat for everyone. I know Lori's going to make introductions, but you're welcome to start taking a peek at that if you'd like.
I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Okay, I'll
with
stop sharing.
introductions.
There we go.
And I will post that link again in case we miss folks.
Yeah.
I'm actually just going to do this so I can see my slides. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Lori Stoll. I am the director of the School of Education. I'm also the director of the San Marcos Writing Project, and I have the honor to serve as part of the Virginia Hanson Committee. And on behalf of the Virginia Hanson Committee and the School of Education, in partnership with Arts Equals Opportunity and the San Marcos Writing Project, I'd like to welcome faculty, teacher candidates, Cal State San Marcos students, classroom educators, administrators, community members, and guests. We're so glad that you are here. Yeah, that's pretty good for a
I like your energy.
Saturday in the middle of March. We're thrilled to have Angela Stockman here with us today to talk about multimodal composition. I've been a fan of Angela's work for a long time, and I'm really excited to hear her this morning. And I want to take a minute to tell you about today's event sponsors and partners, the Virginia Hanson Endowment Fund and the Cal State San Marcos Curricula Committee. This is Virginia Hanson. Virginia Hanson dedicated her life to being the best possible teacher for the children in her care. As a cooperating teacher, she helped numerous student teachers hone their skills. And in 1998, the Virginia Hanson Endowment Fund was established in the Cal State San Marcos School of Education through the generosity of Mr. Victor Hanson. And it's intended to honor the work and memory of his wife, Virginia Hanson. The CSUSM School of Education uses part of the endowment funds for curriculum materials in the Cal State San Marcos Hanson Library, located on the 5th floor of the University Library, and also sponsors the Virginia Hanson Speakers event. Over the years, speakers have provided innovative practices for current and future teachers, and in this way, the Hanson family is assured that Virginia's legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of teachers in San Diego County. The 2022 speaker series is dedicated to Virginia and all teachers who devote their careers to engaging, empowering, and enriching their students. Our next partner is Art Equals Opportunity. This is a project led by Dr. Meryl Goldberg in the School of Arts at Cal State San Marcos. Arts Equals Opportunity is a research-based movement that provides leadership training, literacy residencies, summits, workshops, arts integration, boot camps, and special events for educators, parents, youth, teens, and arts providers. Arts Equals Op focuses on providing access to the arts for all children through exemplary educational practices based on arts integration and arts education. To learn more, please explore our website. If you search Arts Equals Op on the Cal State San Marcos website, you can find it. Follow Art Equals Op on social media and stay connected through our upcoming events. Our next partner is the San Marcos Writing Project. This is led by me and is one of about 190 sites of the National Writing Project Network. 17 are in California. It's a professional development network of teachers whose goal is to improve student writing achievement by improving the teaching and learning of writing in the nation's schools. The Writing Project is a source for teachers and school districts, and information about the project can be found on the School of Ed website as well. Feel free to email me anytime for information about that. And at the end of today's session, put a link in the chat if you would like to receive a certificate for participation in today's professional development. We will email that to you. And I'll also put the swag bag in there again in case you missed it at the beginning. But now it is my great honor to introduce Angela Stockman, who's coming to us from New York. But I wanted to put her books up there again at the beginning. She's really been a leader in the make writing space and innovative thinking about writing and literacy for K-12 students. And so I'm really excited to hear from Angela this morning. So I hope we can give her a warm welcome. And I know it's going to be interactive and look forward to what she has to share. So thank you all for being here, and thank you especially, Angela.
Thank you for having me. It is an honor to be here, and there's nothing better than entering a space to hear a whoop whoop from a participant who is excited to be here. So that was a great kind of energy to start with. I'm Angela Stockman, and I am the author of Make Writing and several other books about integrating not only loose parts play, but multimodal composition inside of K-12 writing classrooms and across the content area as well. I do a lot of work inside of schools in a more sustained fashion. And while I love doing event-based stuff like this and making new friends, hopefully some of the stories that I share with you today will resonate regardless of where you are coming from. I'm hoping that you'll drop your introduction into the chat so I can get a sense of who's in the room, just a quick name and where you're from and maybe what you teach, and especially what level you teach at would be really helpful to me. I started my career in the Catholic diocese here in the city of Buffalo as an elementary teacher in 1993. And I spent a couple of years there before becoming a high school and middle school English teacher in Chautauqua County, which is a rural part of New York State. The bulk of my classroom experience was spent at the middle level, where I taught English language arts in an inclusion setting. And I created and taught Writers Workshop. So I was there for almost 15 years. I left the classroom to become a staff developer for the New York State Department of Ed. And I worked in that role for about 5 years. I served 26 component school districts. And a lot of my work at the time was around curriculum design for English language arts. And what was really fabulous about that was that I met teachers in every single building that I worked in who were really passionate about Writers Workshop. And these were in the days before everyone had a lot of play on social media. And I really wanted to create a space where teachers from across different districts and buildings could come together and talk about what they were loving about teaching in that capacity and the kind of the stones in their shoes as instructors of writing. So I founded the Western New York Young Writers Studio in 2008, and I left my role at Erie One-Bosse's in working for the New York State Department of Ed. And I became an independent consultant at that time. So I've spent the last 14 years doing a lot of action research in my studio and inside of the schools that I serve. And then the pandemic hit. So 2 years ago, I was really fortunate to be invited to become an instructional designer at Damon University, which is just 10 minutes from my house. And a lot of my work in that role is about helping college instructors, including full-time faculty, adjuncts, and staff, create online learning experiences for students. I do a lot of still curriculum design and alignment work, and I also get to teach. So what's really cool is a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you today, they are ideas and strategies that I'm actually using in my assessment methods courses at the college level right now, as well as I teach advanced composition in a fully remote program. My students are actually in Brooklyn and I live in Buffalo, New York, and they are earning a hybrid liberal arts degree. And I'm trying to be sensitive and aware of these emerging practices that really should have been with us here all along. But I think more importantly, I'm struggling with issues too, and trying to make all of this work, coming from a place where this was not how I was necessarily taught how to teach writing or how to assess. So I hope to share good stories with you today, but leave far more time for you to talk with one another and with me as well. And I want to scroll over here and get to know a little bit about who you are. Hi, Kim. And Cecilia, your student teaching. I am working with students right now who are about to begin student teaching, and I'm going to share some of my perspectives that I'm kind of teasing out with all of them right now. And I'm going back into it's our spring break. I'm going back into the classroom to see them on Tuesday. So you might actually be able to help me with a few things. Hi, Leslie. I hope that the strategies that you see here today help you support your bilingual learners well. I've done that work in North Rockland, New York, which is near the city. They have a very strong bilingual population there and a lot of newcomers as well. And it was just really interesting how this work came to fruition there. I'll speak to that a little bit more as we get in. It's really lovely that all of you are dropping who you are into this chat, because it helps me to get to know you a little bit better. It's still a little uncomfortable for me to be behind this screen, and I'm constantly looking for ways to soften it a little bit. I'm used to being able to stand in a room and saying, how many of you are third grade teachers? And people raise their hand and we can have a conversation. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is, hopefully you can see on the screen in front of you our learning intentions for today. And one thing I'm going to do in 1 second is I would like to read them to you aloud. If you could put your thumb, all of you right now, over your camera, just like that, and keep it there as I'm reading these objectives. What I want to get a sense of is which of these objectives are kind of resonating with you the most. Which of them are you most interested in? Like, you are really showing up for that one in particular, and you can do it with more than one. But if I mention a learning intention that is really important to you, that's when I'd like you to uncover your camera and then cover it right back up again. That's going to help me get a sense of which of these things are most meaningful to all of you in the room. And I'll try to hover over some of those topics a little bit longer. My first learning intention is to simply define multimodal composition and help people understand what that is and what makes it different from other forms of composition. I'm also going to speak a tiny bit, and it's an important conversation around the relationship between this and equity inside of our classroom. So if this is what you showed up for today, go ahead and take your thumb down so I get a sense of who values that most. Great, thank you. We'll explore some specific approaches for inviting the creation of multimodal products. So learning experiences that result in the creation of things like podcasts or websites or stop motion videos or infographics or gifographics. It's the product that you're here for. What does that look like? I'm also going to talk a little bit about making the process of writing multimodal through the use of loose parts. So if you're really here, there's Elise uncovering her screen, thank you. If you're here for the loose parts play conversation, and that's really what's interesting you the most when you look at this, thank you. And then I want to make sure that all of us are able to stay connected after today's session. So if you are on social media and you hope to stay connected to me, can you uncover your camera so that I can see who you are? And I will invite you right now. The easiest way to find me is on Twitter, and I'm dropping my handle there. It's just my name. I'm also here if you want to find me on Instagram, and I tend to share new writing and make writing ideas on Instagram nearly every day. I'm trying really hard. And this year I did join, I've been on LinkedIn for a while, but it's such a cold place sometimes. If you're on LinkedIn and you want to follow me there, those are the 3 places where you can find me. And I want to
She shares a lot of free materials on Instagram.
I
She
do.
gives you the links and photos of what she does.
Anything that I design for a school, if I'm facilitating professional learning in a school, or units that I've designed, even for my own classroom or my own work in my studio, I share all of that stuff openly. I don't charge for that because I find my friends and my people that way, and they help me do my work better. So if you find me in any of those places, I try to share as often as I can. Say hello too, so I know that you were here today and we can connect a little bit better. We are going to be making some writing today, and I know that Lori did invite you to at least gather a handful of loose parts or materials so that you can experiment with some of these ideas yourself. I promise I'm not going to make you share anything with anyone if that makes you uncomfortable. And also, if you weren't able to gather those materials, I don't want you to worry about it. You can use the visual alphabet. Dave Gray articulated this really well in the blog post that I've linked to in these slides. And you should be able to access a copy of these slides in the digital swag bag that I shared with everyone in the chat at the start of today's conversation. I'm dropping it there right now. Again, you're going to want to open that and have access to it because we'll be using some of the tools in there. But if you want to read that particular blog post, it's pretty fabulous. Dave always asserts that if you can draw any of these things, you can draw anything. He refers to this as the visual alphabet. So if you didn't bring loose parts with you today, I encourage you to just simply rely on this slide and that particular alphabet in order to express yourself whenever I'm inviting you to make. We're going to start with a real simple beginning. This is called the certainty chart. And one of the ways that I'm going to have you introduce yourself to one another in just a minute is by expressing your answers to these two questions.
Angela, we're not
yeah.
seeing slides. Should we be seeing slides?
You should be seeing slides because I'm sharing my screen. Can you see? Hold on. How weird. Am I no longer sharing my screen?
When you were playing music, we could see it.
Have you not seen my slides all along?
Just when you had music.
Oh my goodness.
There
Yeah,
we go. Now we see.
All right.
We see now.
And can you see now?
Yes,
I'll bet you when I flipped into chat, I shut it off. I'm so sorry.
would be.
Yeah, this is the visual alphabet that I was referring to. And it is in the slide deck. And I did drop the link just now into chat. So you should be able to have your own copy of this. Dave Gray says, and it's important to have the picture in front of you. So thank you for letting me know I wasn't projecting, that if you can draw any of these things, you can draw anything. And so my first invitation to you today was to think a little bit about one thing that you might have been certain of in 2019 before the pandemic that you are no longer certain of. And on the other side of that T-chart, what's one thing that you're certain of right now? I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to dig into this work, and you can just doodle it on a sheet of paper in front of you. If you brought loose parts, you're more than welcome to use those to build your response. I'm not going to ask you to necessarily share it with anyone, and I don't want anyone to feel kind of overexposed in that way with their creativity. You're going to be welcome to, but not required. But take a minute to answer those two questions by building something for me. I'm going to give you until about 1:21 to work on this, and then I'm going to be putting you, or Lori will, into breakout rooms so that you can discuss it with one another. Is that possible, Lori?
Yes, just tell me how many you want in a room.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I'll give you a few minutes and then you're going to share in your spaces. One more minute. And then Lori, if you could, you can just divide people evenly, maybe in groups of 3 or 4.
How long should we go in breakouts? Oh, you know what? Eesh. I'm gonna. I did not create this link, so I don't see the breakouts. Let me go in and out. See if I can get the breakouts to come up for me. Sometimes if I sign in, give them a minute or two. Let's see.
In the meantime, if everyone could take a minute to wind down whatever it is you're doodling or building or thinking about, and drop your answers to that first question into the chat. it'll help us get our conversation and our thinking started for today. What is one thing that you were certain of in 2019 that you are no longer certain of and that you're willing to share? Go ahead and drop your answer into the chat. No, children can't learn online. That is such a powerful reflection. I taught advanced composition last summer in 4 weeks to new English speaking students, some of them, who had never had formal schooling in an American school before, and they had to write a 15-page paper with APA 7 formatting. I firmly believe if that had not been an online and completely remote course that was asynchronous, I don't know that I would have been able to serve them very well. That was a really important thing that I learned as well. And that I would have told you that writing was not best taught that way prior to the pandemic. And now I know that with that population, because I went asynchro, I was able to free up a lot of time that I was able to use to provide more feedback and one-on-one support. We were just talking yesterday about the fact that we thought the world would never shut down prior to 2019. I was talking about that with students at Barnes & Noble last night that I ran into. We never thought college would be completely over for some generations of students. My daughter's a sophomore and she's never been back on campus. She graduates this spring, and yeah, I never would have thought of that either. You were scared about being in the classroom, Matthew. I need to be in the classroom as much as possible. I love the capital letters there. That's perfect. That's perfect. Wonderful.
Angela, I can do breakouts anytime you need to now.
Yeah, if you want to just drive people into maybe groups of 3 or 4, I'd love to put you in a smaller group just so that you can share your thoughts with one another and process this a little bit. Maybe for about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. If you don't see the invitation, hit your breakouts and it should invite you.
Let's stop sharing for just a minute.
Sorry about that. I didn't even look for breakouts.
This is the story of my life. This is remote presenting.
Yeah. Okay, I'm putting 3 minutes on. Did we invite you to a breakout?
You did. I'm
Okay.
just making sure
No,
that.
no, not you. I just want to see
Oh.
Amanda and wanna. Sometimes people stepped away and they,
There she goes.
yeah,
She looked actually like she was frozen for a minute there.
could be, yeah.
I'm just skimming through the chat really quick to get to know people while they're in there.
Yeah, I love that question. I'm gonna see if we can,
Oh, Scott's response.
let me see. Wow. That's really good because this is such a hard time to teach.
Yeah.
That's really, really good to see. Tutoring's effective if they turn on their cameras. Yeah.
Do breakouts now. Oh, you posted that. I thought someone else posted it for a second.
No, I did. Yeah.
Something I learned.
Somebody asked for a transcript and I enabled it. I should have done that at the beginning.
A transcript?
Yeah.
I think that Zoom auto transcribes if you need
Yeah.
it to, right?
Yeah, it's enabled. Hopefully Amanda's okay and can join in. Lisa. Well, I think we all learned. It's interesting. I think many people thought the future of education was screens. And I think a lot of people have been, there's certainly a place. And for
Right.
some kids, that's a great option. But I think that was a great lesson.
Thank you for monitoring the room in the time like that, Lori.
I know there's a way to put the clock in the rooms and I haven't figured that out yet.
They're constantly updating like options and features.
Yeah. Hey, hey,
Welcome
Julie.
back, everyone. Welcome back. So as you're wandering back into the room, I've left the contents of the digital swag bag in the chat again. And I'm assuming that most people who are joining us have done that by now. If you're having any difficulty accessing those materials, can you let us know in the chat? Just take a minute to do that. And I'll make sure that we help you get in before we head into the next slide. When I'm thinking about one thing that I was really certain of in 2019, it was about the importance of alignment and instruction. And in fact, it was my understanding that if we could hold a learning target close, we could actually mix up modalities. We didn't have to require the use of written words to assess standards or learning targets that had nothing to do with written words in math or science. And that in fact, if we had alignment in place and we understood when we were being required to assess the production of letters and words, and when we were assessing content and skills that were different from that, it would give us more freedom to be able to invite multimodality and to do so with confidence. So I was really certain about alignment and the importance of having agile curriculum frameworks in 2019. And I'm still pretty certain about that. But if I learned, go ahead.
We aren't seeing slides if we're supposed to.
Oh, I'm not projecting yet.
Okay, okay.
If there's anything that I have shifted my perspective around, it's that we need an agile curriculum, not only because we want to be able to bring diverse modes of expression into our classrooms and welcome multimodal composition, welcome students to use loose parts and make the process more multimodal. We need a more agile curriculum because we can't predict when a global pandemic is going to happen, or different opportunities too that are exciting to think about. And when we over-articulate curriculum, it makes it really difficult to shift it, to iterate on it in a just-in-time sort of way for students. And those principles are things, or ideas are sort of things that are influencing the way that I'm doing curriculum work now. It's different. And thinking about what's important to consider, it's not enough to just think about, you know, the end of the unit assessment and acceptable evidence for that, and the standards and the essential questions and the big ideas. We need to leave breathing room, and we need to leave room to seek diverse perspectives and shift that curriculum in response to even how we're learning and how we're growing. And that's kind of the work that brought me to this place, to a place where I'm able to think a little bit more about how to teach writing in a way that's so different from what I've done in the past. And those were scary shifts initially. I stand on the shoulders of very great people who have done incredible research and made great contributions to this field. It's scary to say that I think that there are other things that we can do that are very different than what we've probably done in K-12 schools in the past. Can you see my slides now, Lori? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
we see.
All right.
Yep, yep.
Perfect. So these are the 6 different modes of expression. And if you have the digital swag bag and you want to be able to see things up close because maybe your eyes are as aged as mine are at this point, you can open the document directly inside of that folder. What is multimodal composition? These are the 6 different modes of expression. And I wanted to take some time to have you define them first before we get into noticing them at work inside of an example. That is a pretty powerful one. I want you to head back into your breakout room. And in that room, I hope that the people that are in the group with you will decide upon 1 or 2 modes that they will look for as we watch a video together in just a minute. So if you're in with a group of 3, each of you might want to grab 1 or 2. You'll want to make sure that they're different because I'm going to put you back together at the end and you'll be able to talk about where you saw each mode at work inside of the video. So for now, what I'd love is if Lori could put you back into that room that you were just in. If all of you could talk a little bit about which of these modes of expression would you like to look for individually? And if you have all of them covered, you're ready to come back into this room and we're going to look at a video together and have you kind of try to identify each mode of expression at work inside of it. And I will go through these with you before we dive into that video too. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute and you can ask it or drop it into the chat before we break into those rooms. But I think if we could stay in there for maybe 3 minutes, give everybody a chance to kind of tease this out and decide who's going to look for what, that should probably be enough time. Any questions?
If you were in a room with just 2 people or even by yourself, I just moved you to another room, but everybody else should be the same.
Thank you so much. All right, go ahead and divvy them up, everybody. You almost ready, Lori? Almost, is everybody back? All right, perfect. Welcome back, everyone. Let me know in the chat if you cannot see my slides. I want to take a minute to kind of just give you a very brief overview of the 6 different modes of expression. And, you know, the New London group and yeah, the haptic one is something a couple of you are direct messaging me right now about haptics. And that's why I wanted to take a minute to pause. The New London group and those who have done, you know, the foundational work around multimodal composition, they initially defined 5. And it's only been in recent years where the 6th one, haptics, is kind of coming online for us. So I want to speak about each of them and kind of go into that one a little bit more because it's fascinating and it's exciting. And it's also challenging to tease out, and it will be in this video as well. The spatial mode. Whenever I think about the spatial mode of expression, I think about yearbook layout. I was a yearbook editor in high school, and I, you know, led that group as a teacher myself. And so I think about layout and position and proximity and the way that different visual elements relate to one another, and spatial elements as well, and more 3D things. Those things all contribute to the spatial mode of expression, and the thinking that we have to do around organization contributes to that particular kind of literacy. The gestural mode is all about small body movements and facial expression and eye movement and body language. Slam poets, when they widen their eyes, are really relying on the gestural mode of expression in order to communicate. The alphabetic mode is the one that we privilege most inside of our schools. It is the use of letters and words and alphabetic text in print. Visual modes include the use of images and the use of characters. Font is influenced here as well. Photography, illustration, graphics, emojis. All of these call on our visual mode of expression. The oral mode has to do with designing things that are intended to be heard, like music and ambient noise. But haptics is really fascinating. Haptic expression is all about vibration. So when you have your phone in your hand or your back pocket and it vibrates, and you can tell by the vibration either what app is sending you a notification or which human being is calling you on the phone, that's haptic expression. Haptic expression is also Braille. And our ability to feel and to sense what's being communicated through that texture. Haptic expression is what informs product designers, like some who create shampoo and conditioner, to design bottles differently. Shampoo is usually one size, and the ridges on the sides of some of those bottles are different than conditioner, so that people who are without sight are able to recognize those things when they're in the shower. Haptic expression is showing a lot of promise in reading comprehension as well. There are haptic vests that are being tested, and readers can wear them. And for instance, if a character is being tickled, the vest will tickle them. And there's some preliminary research that's showing that it increases reading comprehension in a really fascinating way. So haptic expression is all about vibration. And we're going to talk about this more after we watch this video. And I'm going to invite you, as we do, to look for your mode at work. If you're looking for haptics, it's going to be a little bit challenging, but I'm going to circle back to this after we're done watching, and we'll get to translate it and process it a little bit more together. So we're going to take a peek at this video, and as we do, try to document or notice where you see your chosen modes at work.
The ancient Greeks had 4 words for love. The first is philia. Philia is affection that grows from friendship. Next, there's storge, the kind you have for a grandparent or a brother.
Let's go.
Third, there's eros, the uncontrollable urge to say, I love you. Fourth kind of love is different. It's the most admirable. It's called agape. Love has an action.
This is good.
It takes courage, sacrifice, strength. For 175 years, we've been helping people act on their love, so they can look back or look ahead and say, we got it right. We did good.
Dang.
And so what I'd like to do now is invite you to head back into your breakout rooms just to discuss very quickly at least one example of where you saw a mode of expression at work. And if you were responsible for focusing on haptics, I want you to talk about not only the challenges of finding it in a video like this, but also where it could have possibly occurred, thinking about the affordances of technology and those different sorts of tools that might bring that sort of thing to life. So go ahead and head back into your breakout rooms for about 5 minutes this time and discuss where you saw them at work and also where you could maybe see haptic expression being layered in a little bit differently or better. We'll talk about that more when we return.
Do you do this differently if you're in person? This exercise?
It's the same exercise, but we do it at tables.
Yeah.
And I can walk the room a little bit more efficiently because usually, I don't know if you find this, but so much of using the technology consumes a lot of the time that I would have used to facilitate differently.
Mhm.
So I would love to be walking the room right now and listening in on conversations. And you can do that. I could pop into some of these rooms, but when you pop into a breakout room, it disrupts everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
it
people are like,
does.
oh, she's here. And then people want to sometimes ask me questions
Performative,
about,
yeah.
right. And they want to ask me questions about things that are not relevant to the conversation that I wanted them to have. So it's structured the same, but it feels a lot different.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we're looking at everything 2D, and is there a different exercise we could do that might help us think of those modalities? in a
Yeah,
different
so
way?
another thing that I love to show this video, but I have in the
I love
past.
that video.
Stations.
Yeah,
And when we create stations, I can put technology tools that like vibrate
yeah,
in a station, or I can have examples of Braille there. It's really difficult to have them understand and to demonstrate the vibration and touch piece through this medium.
yeah,
It's a little more challenging, but I have a good conversation
yeah.
that I think will drive it home when they come back.
So, and I see the relationship to your opening question and what we learned and we're certain of in the pandemic. I like that phrasing, different than what we learned or what we didn't learn, but just what we were certain about and not.
What you were certain about,
Yeah.
and what are you certain about now?
Certainty drives me nuts, but.
It does, and I like the framing a lot because it's not what are you certain about and now what are you uncertain about, which has like this negative connotation, but almost like I was certain about this then and now I'm certain about this other thing now. And
Yeah. If you were certain and now you're not, can you be
right?
certain
It
about
inspires
anything?
us to be a little more uncertain, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Open to inquiry, yes.
Yeah. Is all of this going all right so far? Is there any feedback you want me to be
Great,
responsive to? Okay.
I'm gonna put 1 minute warning. Looks like we have a couple of students who turned their screens on and left or napped or something.
It matter.
Their loss.
Yeah. Will they get the recording after?
Yeah, we'll send the recording out.
Yeah.
And we have couple of instructors here with their students, so I know there'll be follow-up, yeah. And some teachers, I saw some teachers in our audience. I'm gonna close because it takes a minute to get back.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you here. Susan's one of our supervisors. Hey, Julie. Julie's an instructor. Nice to see you.
Thanks for being here.
I just had a hugely philosophical discussion with two of my 544 students, but it was deep.
Will you share it? Or is
Well,
it too deep to share?
I'll have them share it, but I was inspired just by listening to them. So, and what a beautiful commercial.
Isn't it gorgeous? Yes, the first time I saw that, I was working actually with social studies teachers in a high school setting, and they were exploring rhetoric. And then we got into this huge conversation about philosophy and other things. And they were looking for multimodal examples of how to define those terms. And that we stumbled upon it. It was truly right after the commercial was made. And I've used it in different contexts just because I can't quite find something else that's quite as rich as that video is. It's really gorgeous.
Well, to me, all of those different aspects of love could be used in some way to describe what we do as teachers.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Yes. And so one of the things that I wanted to just mention briefly is you're going to find this document in the swag bag too. So if you wanted to print it and use it with students or in your own work, that's totally fine. This is a really powerful tool. You've had some time to kind of consider the definition of the different modes of expression and just identify them quickly in that video. But where the richer work really comes in, and Julie's, you're leading us there. That's a great segue into this conversation, is noticing the conceptual relationships between the modes. So for instance, how do the images of the human beings in this video and their encounters with one another and the way that they're engaging, how does video really enhance the definitions of those words? And what does video afford us that print could not? How does the music, the oral expression, how does that affect the way that we're interpreting the content on that video of the print on that video as we're moving through it? These question stems are ones that once learners have an understanding of what the modes of expression are, this is where the deeper thinking and learning and conversation can happen inside of the analysis process. Understanding the relationship between sound effects. What's the effect of sound? The sound effects. How are sound effects influencing the way that we're interpreting this? And what's the relationship between word choice and spatial design? What's the relationship between the designer's purpose and the color or the hue, or even the framing of certain pieces of this video? That analysis process is so important because this is where we can begin to understand that all expression is multimodal. And it's not, sometimes there's this perspective that it's about cute, or it's about easy or fun, or even being able to finesse so-called resistant writers, which I'll speak to more in a minute. And that was an early perspective of mine that was really flawed. It's why I keep writing books, because I disagree with what I wrote a year previous. Anyway, what's so important to understand is that multimodal composition is an incredibly complex process. And the decisions that are made are usually around questions like these and more, because context matters as well. When we think about haptics, I'm just going to say this. If you have seen the opening scene of, oh my goodness, I'm going to flake out on the title of this movie now, The Sound of Metal. if you've seen the opening scene of The Sound of Metal, you will understand how a designer could manipulate haptic expression even in video. That film is about a drummer, and the opening scene is so loud that it vibrates in your chest if you're playing it on stereo. If you've ever been to a Weezer concert or turned their music up in your car, if you've ever turned up the bass on something, if you've been to a Foo Fighters concert, if you've listened to their music in a similar way, that vibration in your chest is absolutely demonstrating the relationship between oral expression and haptic expression. There's a very close relationship between music and haptics. And while there are 1,000 other examples of it in the field of technology and especially virtual reality and gaming, there are all sorts of important features that are haptic related there. That's what I think of most often as someone who writes, is the relationship between music and haptic expression as well. This whole myth around complexity and that written words are more complex than anything that we might do multimodally came back to me when I saw this video. This went viral, I think, last week or the week before. I need you to take a peek at it and watch it all the way to the end. We're going to play it all the way to the end. This is research and information writing. So if you are an English language arts teacher, if you teach writing in any setting, and you might maintain a perspective that multimodal composition may not be as meaningful, as done as in a rigorous way and in a rigorous manner, the way that a composition that's written with words might be, have a peek at this. These are data points that are plotted to show how the
You don't see your
temperature of the
screen.
Earth is changing. Pardon me?
You can't see your screen.
Why does it stop? I'm not understanding why it's not. Thank you so much for telling me. I'm going to move this back and play it again. This video is demonstrating how the temperature of the Earth is changing over time. These data points were plotted monthly. And there's something that the visual and the spatial affords us here that perhaps presenting a paper or writing an article might not, especially as we move toward the end of the video. And so often, I do, in my early work with some instructors, encounter this perspective that creating a multimodal composition does not require as much complexity, perhaps, as writing something using letters and words alone. And what I'm reminded of is these relationships that must be considered as we're moving through that compositional process. So when we're thinking about creating a multimodal product, we really are considering the relationship of each mode of expression on others, on the audience as a whole, how it helps us to communicate information, how it might convolute it if we make the wrong choices. Each mode of expression affords us something that others do not, and getting a just right fit is a challenging thing to consider. This is, as I explained, research and information writing. And as you look at it, I think that you can see that often it isn't that we're not still consuming print or producing print through the multimodal compositional process. It's that print is actually a vehicle that we rely on to create a multimodal product, but it lives on the design room floor. And there's more. So Jody Shipka wrote a book called Toward a Composition Made Whole. And it resonated with me when I did my last round of research for my upcoming book, because it really made me appreciate the fact that when we allow writing to be multimodal, we're able to communicate so much more, and with layers of complexity and richness and texture that written words alone do not allow. But it's bigger than that. There are some real cultural implications here as well. And I learned this from Zaretta Hammond, who is the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. Some of you may be very familiar with that book. It is outstanding and important reading. And she digs into the differences between cultural archetypes like individualism and communalism or collectivism. It isn't that one of these cultures is better than the other or worse than the other. It's not that one is more talented or smarter than the other. It's that they're different. And these cultural archetypes also reveal very different neurological profiles as well. So the way that neuron and dendrite growth occurs in our brain is very much influenced by where we come from and our histories. And what we know is that the West, we may be led by individualists. Individualism may be the dominant culture in the West, but that doesn't mean that the volume of people who live here are mostly individualistic. The fact is that the rest of the world is largely communal or collectivist, and the rest of the world is largely multimodal in how they choose to express themselves, how they appreciate that, where their talents and their gifts lie. And the majority of people that take up space in our country, they're largely communal as well, including the little people that walk through our classroom doors every day. So often I wonder, because I ate up every word that every expert ever shared with me about how to run a really great writing workshop and how to teach writing well. I worked with many different people who were so talented here, and the stone in my shoe was that there were still a good number of kids every year, and there still are in my life, who will say that they hate writing and who feel that they're not very good at it. And I really began to wonder if it wasn't, writing and writers that were the problem. It was me and the way that I was teaching it. Turns out it was also the way that I was defining it as well. And the fact is that multimodal composition is not just about a composition made whole. It's about identity as well. It is about culturally responsive teaching. It is about neuroscience too. And I do not claim to be any expert here at all. But what I do know is that these conversations have been a long time coming. And it's really important that I continue to be willing to learn more about them. These issues in particular, and the connection between our cultural, our social, our political history, how we've defined writing, who gets to be called a writer, and what this is looking like inside of our K-12 schools. There is a process that I tend to support that works really well for me when I'm working in schools for helping writers create multimodal products. We usually look at a single example of a form first. So if students were going to make a meme, I would say, let's find an example of one. Let's look at just one together. And let's consider who the audience is, what the stance of the creator seems to be. Let's think a little bit about context as well, and the design choices that were being made. So if that were the case, we might look at a meme like this one, and I'll give you a minute to take a peek at it. And as you do, I'd love for you to drop this answer into the chat for me. And we're asking ourselves kind of what makes a meme a meme. And I'm wondering, who was this made for? Who's the audience? This creator created this meme for a specific audience. Who is it? You can either unmute yourself or drop ideas into the, it was made for teachers. And some of you who are young may not even understand why this was made for teachers. I'm not sure if you use bulletin board edging quite as much as I did when I was in the classroom, but that's what we're looking at here is edging for a bulletin board. And we're just 1 or 2 inches short. And this was every Sunday, you know, of the start of every month when I was in the classroom, because that's always when I was switching stuff out and I was eager to get home and get ready for the week. And this would happen to me. Yeah, that is definitely who the audience is. And if we think back to these questions, you know, we can tell how the creator feels about that topic. And it is funny, but what's funny is that clearly we're all frustrated about that sort of thing. Why does the context matter here? This is a tougher question. Try to drop an answer for me in the chat. Why does context matter? Yeah, that's why I don't use it, math teachers. It is. It would be great for a measurement unit. Why would context matter here when we're looking at this particular meme? Yeah, it has to be relatable. So we have to think about which educators in particular might relate and even understand that particular meme. You know, which generation did they come from? Do they, you know, I don't know how many young teachers might still be using this. You know, who is it designed for? And what difference is the creator trying to make with this particular thing? They're trying to make us laugh, right? And the last question we might ask of one is, why does multimodality matter? The thing about memes is that it's really easy to create bad ones. And that's why I love using them when I talk about multimodal composition, because there are things that you need to have mastered. And there are complexities inside of meme design that you really need to know how to navigate in order to do it well. There is print here, but the print doesn't say. It's so frustrating when I run out of bulletin board border. That's like the giveaway, you're giving it away. The print that's used here actually helps us discover, you know, what is funny about this meme, but it leads us to that place. It doesn't spoon feed us the conclusion. The visual is really important as well, because the visual is what's carrying the thing that makes us laugh. There's so much more about memes that's really important to dig into. And so the next step in that process, after we look at one together and we get a sense of, you know, who's the audience, what was the creator's stance, why does context matter here, what design choices were made. If I'm working with students, I want them to define those things for their own creation first, but then I want them to look at multiple examples. And what I'm asking them to do when we look at multiple examples is, all right, like now you know who your audience is and what your stance is going to be, and maybe what context and design choices you're thinking about. But what are the rules? What are the conventions of a meme? This is one of the other complexities about multimodal composition, is that there are no necessarily fixed rules for conventions. We don't teach the conventions of multimodal composition. We inspire learners to seek conventionality. We ask them to look at multiple examples to define what the conventions are. And we do this because these forms are constantly shape-shifting. We also do this because depending on the kind of meme that a student might want to create, the rules might be a little bit different. The conventions might be a little bit different. So I'm going to ask Lori to throw you back into your breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you maybe 3 minutes. I want you to look at all of the meme examples that I've dropped into this slide deck for you. As you're moving through them, you're gonna notice that there are different varieties, and I want you to take a peek at all of them. That's why you're going to need the slide deck probably to do this. They're on slides 12 through 21. So there are a bunch of them here. You're going to head back into your room, and your job is to figure out what the rules are here. What are the conventions of a meme? What makes a meme a meme? What are the essential conventions of it? If you have a question, go ahead and unmute and ask. You can also drop it into the chat if you'd like. Otherwise, Lori, if you would pop everyone into their breakout rooms for about 3 minutes, we'll let you try and define those conventions.
I love an inquiry into conventions.
Memes are good to use and
Yeah,
short.
that's very
Like-
smart. Yeah.
They're pretty rich.
Mhm.
And I went on Twitter this week and asked people to share, and
Oh.
they shared the best ones. It was so
Twitter is such a great educational source and crowdsourcing, and yeah, anybody that's not on Twitter,
good. People are very generous there. too.
people are. Or once in a while I'll come across, I need a poem for a pick-me-up, and then it's like, oh, this is my pick-me-up for the week, just reading what people post.
Right.
Yeah.
They're very generous.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I know a lot of bad stuff happens on Twitter, but I'm always defending it to people.
You can afford it, or you can avoid it.
Yeah. You can create the algorithm for your own.
Yeah, it really is like the group that you create. It's
Yeah.
who you choose to
Yeah.
follow and.
Right, respond to and. Mhm.
Welcome back, everyone. Is everyone here? Lori, are we still waiting?
Still waiting.
Okay.
Break
As
out.
you wander back into the room, can you drop at least one convention of memes into the chat for me? What makes a meme a meme? What are the rules? It normally does not have a lot of text. That's right, Gwen. Illusion. Yeah. And you're kind of getting at something that I love most about memes is that it seems that those who create memes really respect their audience's intelligence. They make people feel smart. When you get a meme and it makes you laugh, it makes you feel good too, because you know that you could understand. They are relatable usually to common problems that we all encounter, or irritating people or pet peeves that we have. And yeah, they can be interpreted very differently depending on your experiences and your content expertise too. I got these memes because I went on Twitter last week and I said, friends, everybody share your favorite memes with me. I promise to share back, and I'm going to give them all of this content back so that they can use it however they want. But what was so fun was noticing how many of the memes that I received came from educator friends on Twitter who were sharing a meme that was really relevant to their content expertise. So I see science there, and I see math, and I see my friends who are working on their dissertations and choosing qualitative or quantitative research. And the people who shared those, it was really cool how the things that they shared actually reflected a lot of their own identity. So these things that you're mentioning around how it really matters, where you come from and what you know, and how you can relate to them, it's one of the rules of memes. The visual is usually far more important than the print. They can be squared up nicely and framed in that sort of square so that they make for good social sharing. The visual is large and it's centered inside of the meme, unless somebody's manipulating it with intention for a different purpose. All of these processes where we're considering not only the modes of expression, but what difference are we trying to make? What is our stance here? Who is our audience? What context are we sharing this in? These are all of the things that must be considered if we're really going to do a good job of creating a multimodal composition. And memes are a really great example of the complexity. It looks simple, but it's not. And I'm sure that either you, friends of yours, students that you have, your own kids, you might be someone who wants to create a great meme, but unless you're making those considerations, it's really difficult to do so well. And so when we get to a place where we're ready to actually create a multimodal product, it's important that there's a really clear process in place for it. That's why I'm leaving you with these sort of 5-step processes for creating a product. And we're going to get into one in a minute for creating a more multimodal process. But what I wanted to point out for those of you that are kind of feeling the depth of this work and understanding that it's bigger than a 2-hour conversation is inside of that digital swag bag, I've left you something called the Claim Maker's Toolkit. It looks like this. And when you scroll into it, you're going to see that you can use pieces of it if you want to, but it's really a unit. And so if you are teaching upper elementary school, middle school, or high school, this is actually a document that you can print and share and use with your students. And it walks them through the process of simply noticing multimodality to getting to a place where we're making a rhetorical analysis of a single multimodal claim using the exact approach that I shared with you earlier. And then making a rhetorical analysis of 3 multimodal claims before we get to a place where we're actually defining the conventions and starting to plan our own. I have put some documents in here that make for great planning tools. And you are welcome to print and use this or adapt it. I find that oftentimes the people that I'm working with instructionally and in a lot of different varied roles, they appreciate having some sort of framework to work off of as they're thinking about bringing this into their own work. I also have something called the Make Writing Starter Set that I've left in there for you as well. It's in that swag bag. And here, we're going to shift the conversation away from designing a unit that results in a multimodal product. And we're going to talk a little bit more about making the process of writing a little bit more multimodal. So if you brought loose parts of any kind with you to the work today, this is the place where we're going to kind of play with them a little bit more. And if not, I encourage you to use Dave Gray's visual alphabet. If you'd like, you can certainly do that. Or you can just grab something really quick. Anything that's around you will do as long as they are loose parts. A loose part is something that can be picked up, moved around and carried, mixed, remixed. It does not have to be pretty. In fact, I find that ugly really matters when it comes to making writing and making the process of writing more multimodal. oftentimes my early work with this was legitimately only around kids who were really presenting as struggling or resistant or reluctant writers. And it wasn't until I started implementing loose parts play with greater intention in my writing workshops and in other schools that I visited that I began to see the potential for all writers to use these materials with intention. I've now made 3 different study tours to Reggio Emilia, Italy, and it's been the pedagogistas there who have really pushed my thinking and demonstrated for me the compositional power of loose parts for all learners. And if you have experience here, or if it's a passion of yours, feel free to drop your thoughts and connections into the chat. I'd love to connect with you more because it's difficult to find people who are really into this work. And I'd love to know a little bit more about where you come from. We're going to play with this with opinion writing. And so this set of prompts is actually, it's in your chat, or not in your chat, in your digital swag bag. But I'm going to move through them and ask you, as I'm asking you these questions, to either jot your responses to them or just hold them kind of in your head or in your heart. Where we want to get by the end of this process is to a place where you have a handful of potential topics for some rapid opinion writing that you're really interested in playing with for the next few minutes. I find it so important to invite writers to think about a lot of potential ideas before they choose just one. And I'm sure you're the same. A lot of teachers that I work with know that it is much better to invite students to think about lots of ideas first, to brainstorm before they take that more divergent thinking and make it more emergent and then convergent. The challenge is this: not many of the teachers that I initially meet actually share a variety of questions with kids first, and then kids struggle to come up with ideas. And teachers will say, well, I let them pick whatever they want, but giving them that choice can be really overwhelming, and it absolutely can. Choice is a tricky beast, and it's a really important thing to offer, but there's power inside of constraint as well. And so I find that if I can ask a lot of really good questions that are kind of wider and allow for different interpretation, usually writers will have a handful of ideas to pick from. So that's what I'm going to do with you. And I'm wondering and hoping that this helps you come up with a topic to play with. You've just walked out of the best class you've ever taken, or staff development session, professional learning experience. What are people saying about it in the hall, and why? That's worth writing an opinion about. Recount the realest thing that someone ever did on social media, the thing that was so truly authentic that it mattered. What made it matter? That's worth making an argument or sharing an opinion about. Who gives the best advice in your school or in your professional world? Is it what this person says, or how he or she says it that helps? Or is it something else? Share an opinion about that. Do parents violate their kids' privacy when they share photos and anecdotes about them on their Facebook page or on their social media accounts on Instagram or elsewhere? Does technology leave us feeling more or less alone? Which matters more, the lyrics or the music? Which artists are sellouts, and what confirms this? Does television capture the diversity of America yet? Tell us about a stereotypical character that isn't serving television viewers well. When was a video game a real game changer? What characters should authors be creating right now? Is writing bigger than print? Does graffiti qualify as art? Is your school diverse? What matters about your answers? When do phone calls matter more than text messages? Is school still relevant? How do you know this? What is your greatest pet peeve? Which school policy has negative, unintended consequences? In which spaces and places in your community need better care? Consider all of those questions. You can access the slide deck in your digital swag bag if you like. I'm going to give you a second. Pick one opinion that you would like to play with and share for the next few minutes. And what I'm going to ask you to do is build it. Build your opinion or draw it. Structure matters here. And I'm kind of looping back to an assertion I made early in our conversation where I said, if I know what the learning target is, I can actually invite multimodality. And that includes a multimodal process. What makes this different than creating a multimodal product is that in this approach, the final product is actually composed with written words. This was my earliest work. It is the content of my first book, which was Make Writing. And I came to it because I was working with writers who presented as resistant or reluctant, or they were newcomers to the country. And I knew that they had really complex ideas to share, but that print was creating a barrier for them. So I'm going to invite you to take just a few minutes and use the loose parts that are in your world, in your environment right now, to build me an opinion. If you're a beginner here, you might start with the structure that's at the top: opinion, evidence, call to action. Here, the loose parts are metaphorical, they're symbolic, they represent your complex ideas. The center structure is a little bit more complex. I typically use that one with writers who are in grades 4 through 8, middle school. On the bottom, you start to see something that looks more like middle school, high school structure. If you're looking for different examples of what this can look like, this is from work that I did inside of schools. These are small moment stories. Again, the structure matters. If you know the structure and you know the learning target, you can invite learners to use whatever materials or modes of expression they wish to create it. So I'm going to give you about maybe 2 minutes to quickly build something, construct it or draw it. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms and I'm going to ask you to share your process. Just describe it. You can share the visual of it if you want to, but I'd like you to talk that through with the people that are in the room. And I want you to talk about what is making you nod and making you feel happy and satisfied, and what do you agree with here. I also want you to talk about what's uncomfortable and what is challenging or making you take pause, thinking about bringing this into your own classroom. So take a few minutes to build, and I'll tell you when. Lori's going to put you into breakout rooms to talk about the good, the bad, and the potential ugly of making writing this way in your own classroom. Take a few minutes to build first. If you have questions or thoughts, go ahead and drop them into chat. I have my eyes on that. One more minute and then we'll move into breakout rooms. Okay, Lori, if you want to move everyone in, as you enter your breakout room, discuss the good, the bad, and the potential ugly of inviting this kind of making and writing in your own classroom.
Hi, can you put me in a breakout room? I had to come back in.
Oh, me too.
Sure. Okay, let me find you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. You know, I didn't want to go right to structure. I was just playing around with the idea that I chose.
All right.
I know we are very limited on time. How long do you give kids to sort of play?
So at the beginning of the way that
very enticing to just play with.
yes, and it's
stuff.
usually one of the things that teachers will say if they haven't, if they're just doing this for the first time, and they'll even say kids are messing around with the materials, they're throwing it at each other. And when I went to Italy, the pedagogistas there were so lovely, and they were like, I want you to notice whether kindergartners throw it at each other and first graders, who's throwing it? And it's always middle school students and fourth graders and fifth graders. And there was this whole conversation around, we take the materials away from them after first grade. They forget how to use them.
Yeah.
And they said it so beautifully. They said kindergartners know the language of clay, and eighth graders have forgotten it. And what they'll do is they'll mess with it, and they're trying to figure out how it works. They're trying to, and they're also like embarrassed a little bit to be playing with those materials.
Yeah.
But typically, there are ways to make that better, including keeping the materials out during homeroom, using them for non-academic purposes, letting them kind of get their jollies out with them in other ways before you're using them in a writing setting. And then usually I use a fire starter. So if my learning target is that we're just going to create the character for our short story.
Yes, I remember.
And that's what my mini lessons around, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we never nail things down. We never tape them down, glue them down.
Right.
Diane Cashin talks about let the loose parts live to play another day. We put them away, and we have to transition to writing. So they make and they transition to writing all in one class period. And everything put away. Yeah.
Okay.
When I'm running my summer studio sessions, we have 3-hour sessions, and the kids are there all week. So I let them leave stuff out, and it's a much more controlled environment. But if I were an 8th grade teacher with 5 class periods and 140 students, we would be putting those materials away.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
And I'm going to save a little bit of time at the end for people to ask questions.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I was a middle school teacher. I did stuff with Play-Doh. But yeah, I'm really intrigued by this, but I think you have to get kind of in that mindset of feeling comfortable playing.
Right.
I didn't give him a warning because we were chatting.
Okay. Be all right.
But the rooms are going to close in 16 seconds.
So as you're wandering back in, I'm curious to know, not necessarily the good, but what questions are coming up, because this is a really different approach when we're thinking about teaching writing. And so if there are questions or challenges, I want you to drop them into the chat. I'm going to be saving some time at the end of today's session to answer those questions, but I'm happy if one of you wants to unmute and just ask a couple right now, we can pause and do that. Anyone want to ask anything?
I would ask something.
Go ahead.
So I'm very much enjoying everything that we're doing, very much.
Okay.
And I'm curious how the creating something, let's say high school class, they're using acorns, using pine cones, using like pieces of Legos. How is that going to translate? How is the teacher going to and help the students connect that now that is going to turn into an essay?
Yeah, I'm going to show you right now. You're kind of like actually leading me into the next piece. Can you see my screen? I'm sharing. Can all of you see it?
Yes, yes.
All right, good. So here, I'm going to skip to this one right here. This is a story. At the elementary level, we have somebody wanted, but so then. Writers are able to rapidly prototype their ideas at the start of a unit in one class period. So what you see at the secondary level is a story. We have somebody wanted, but so then for Anya. If students know how to structure a simple story at the elementary level, we can teach them that structure repeats for each character at the secondary level, that a novel has scenes and characters and each character has their own journey. When I work with high school writers, and the structure might be different. If you look in the Make Writing Starter Set, I've left you structures for every form, including argument writing. I use this as well with my advanced composition students who are writing 15-page APA 7 research papers in a 700 level course. What this allows me to do is to peek over their shoulder quickly. They can rapidly build a prototype of their story. They can talk with me, they can audio record their intentions, and I can listen to how coherently they're hanging this thing together. I can quickly identify where breakdowns in their planning and their organizational structure and their research and the evidence they're bringing to an argument and their rhetorical analysis, where that's happening. If I asked a kid to write this, to create, to plot out a story, to create an outline for a research paper, it would take me multiple days. The other thing that happens is that when print creates a barrier, students will often lower the complexity of their idea to match their print power. And they will end up writing about something that's either not engaging for them, and they won't use the vocabulary words in this gorgeous thing that they had in their head cognitively, simply because they have a difficult time transitioning it to print. When I talk with writers, they'll often tell me, I'll say, okay, so who's your somebody? And this student had said, my somebody is Princess Anya. She's going to be a time traveler. She wonders how she's going to make a difference. She, what's her purpose? Like, what is she trying to do? What does she want? What motivates her? She wants to cure hate in the world. So I bulleted that out and I slapped it next to the picture. And what I started to realize is this writer, my assessment was that there were a couple of strategies that could actually help her turn these preliminary ideas into something a little bit more gorgeous. And in this case, it was just a conversation. So I'm thinking, I taught these 3 different lessons, and she revised this very small, tiny bit of print and into something that was a little bit more sophisticated and complex. Sometimes it's enough to have the conversation with the writer. Sometimes students will build something like this. Let me take you backwards. They'll build something like this, what you see in pink, and they'll start writing before I even ask them to start writing. And the use of materials actually generates ideas that they wouldn't have had otherwise. For instance, I'll ask, why did you choose bricks or rocks or these wood chips? Why did you choose the color black here? What do these three things represent? And when they start to talk through their intentions, similes and metaphors and symbols and motif starts to emerge from using the materials. So the materials really matter because they generate that sort of those ideas for the students as well. Some of them, like I said, can transition pretty easily, and I'll model this for little kids especially, where I start to label everything in my build. And some of them will need me to show them how I'm taking the labels and stretching it into the first bit of my story. Students who are new language learners, those who are uncomfortable with print, they might need me to go a little bit further and actually create a sentence frame that they can drop their labels into. It really depends on the age, the need, the experience of the writer. If you look in the Make Writing Starter set, you're going to find that I've left very explicit directions for transitioning to print there and different approaches for doing this. I have to say that one of my favorite this year is transcription. Transcription is where the writer will take a piece of a build and they will speak aloud what they would put into writing, and a partner listens and says it back to them, or they simply audio record their own voice. And then they listen to their own voice over and over again, and they use what they hear to start writing. There is significant research around the influence of transcription on both the quantity and the quality and sophistication of writing that people produce. I'm not quite sure how we missed this over the last few decades, but I don't know if any of you are familiar with Leah Mermelstein. She and I talk about this quite a bit, the power of transcription inside of the writing process. The last book that I wrote, which is being published as we speak, two versions of a book on multimodal composition, one for elementary teachers and one for middle school and high school. Those books were written entirely on an app called, and I'll drop the name of it into chat because I know some of you will ask, Otter. The Otter app allowed me to get in my car every morning, make a 1-hour drive to work, and simply speak like I'm speaking to you right now, each chapter of the book. It flipped it into print for me. When I got home, I simply downloaded it as a Google Doc and I cleaned it up, and that was the next chapter of my book. I did that because I wanted to get a sense of how these transcription apps might work for writers. I also used it with Devin last year, and I want to share this example with you. Devin came into my writing studio absolutely refusing to sit down, let alone produce anything with written words. He is a genius maker. He is all about the building, and he is an incredible fan of a particular book series. So he combined his love of making and his love of this particular series to do a bit of fan fiction. And the very first time that he showed me anything, it was an image like this. We were using photos as our loose parts that day, and he had made the beginning of his story by selecting this picture. And I asked him to say, I said, Devin, tell me what you would write for the beginning of your story if you were to put it down with written words. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but I really want to hear from you how it is that you would write it. Like, what words would you use? And this is what he said. There's a little bit of a lag.
Sand. That's the first thing Bob felt when he awoke. Bob was a skinny thing with almost no meat on his scrawny little bones. He has brownish blonde hair that's always standing on end. Bob tried to get up, he took a step, and slipped on the wet pebbles. he groans.
It'll fix it. Keep going.
Then he got up again, half walking, half sliding. He thought to himself, I gotta quit whimpering and find my dragon. And with that, he marched across the sand.
All right. So what's really interesting about this is that one would assume that Devin is reading from a piece of paper or something that he put down in print there, and he's not. He was literally looking at that picture, and that's what he wanted the beginning of his story to sound like. That's what he wanted to say at the start. And I am telling you, if I put a pencil in his hand, he would not have come up with something that rich and that complex. What was also really interesting is that the Otter app was flipping it into print for him as he was speaking, and he noticed that the transcription was flawed and that it misspelled a word. And you might have heard him stop, and he says to me, this is spelled wrong. And I said, it's okay, it'll fix it. You can keep going. What was fascinating was that was the first time that Devin showed an interest in actually correcting the print. And after we flipped all of that into print for him, he was so proud of that story, and had every right to be, that he wanted to go back and make sure that every sentence was absolutely perfect. And so that final product was gorgeous. Scott, what I'm going to do in just a few minutes is there's a folder that also shows you how I approach loose parts play with middle school, high school, and college students using sticky notes. There's a folder that I need to find that I wasn't expecting to share with you today, but I'm going to drop the link into chat in a second and you can dig into it. What I can tell you is that when I research for my own books, I will grab a text and a pad of sticky notes, and I will put one quote on a sticky note or an index card. Usually it's a sticky note and it's of a specific color. Every book has its own color. By the end of the week, I finished reading a book. It's full of sticky notes. Each sticky note only includes one small idea. When I'm working with writers around argument writing or essay writing and they're collecting evidence, I'll have them do the same thing. One idea per sticky note, leave it right in the text. At the end of the week, they spread all of their sticky notes out on a desk or a table or the floor or a wall, and they start to cluster their ideas. Each of those clusters, then they assess the quality of those loose ideas, the quality of the evidence, and each of those clusters then becomes a bit of evidence, a category of evidence that will support their claim. This is a game storming process called affinity mapping, and people use it in a lot of different contexts across a lot of different industries. It's actually something that the more creative industries expect people to know how to do when they walk in the door. This is a lot of what happens inside of Silicon Valley, and it's less about materials, right? And it's more about the looseness of ideas and loosening up someone else's ideas so that you can synthesize them and mix and remix them. So the process is called affinity mapping. If you Google game storming and affinity mapping, the entire protocol is online, and lots of people have translated it in different ways. If you Google it, affinity mapping and my name, I think I actually wrote a blog post about it, and there's pictures in there too. That you can look at. But in just a few minutes, I'll take some time to drop that folder in here for you before you leave as well. And you can see it contextualized with more sophisticated and older writers. Who else has questions for me? Problems that were coming up in your conversations with one another, or challenges that you want me to speak to or contextualize the work for you? Anyone?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Hi. So Jose and I were, he's currently a teacher candidate, student teacher in kindergarten.
Uh-huh.
And we were talking about, he was concerned about the amount of objects and the kinds of objects when you're working with really young children.
Right.
And if it would be better to have a set or a limited amount of objects for, because I'm thinking about, things are going in their mouths, or, they're throwing them at each other, or things, but then again, as I saw that picture where you were like modeling for the students, that kind of sort of, I went, okay, so then they would know what to do with it. But so working with super young children, how, what's your thought about the kind of limiting the materials or providing materials that are sort of directed?
So what I recommend is that you do what you think is going to be most manageable for you as you start, but you document how students respond.
Okay.
And you use your documentation to guide your next decision. It can be incredibly overwhelming, actually, for students to have a massive amount of choice. Also, what we know is that some parts are actually looser than others. Play-Doh is a very loose part. Watercolor, it does not get looser than that. But you can see how like Legos or blocks are not quite as pliable, right? Foil is really loose. Shaving cream is really loose. Wire is really wonderful to work with. Sometimes if the part doesn't do what learners are expecting it to do, they can reach really unproductive levels of frustration very early on. And your goal is to make sure that the loose parts play, that the experience is rewarding for them, right? So I'll often start with just offering Play-Doh, or something, a little bit more pliable and looser. Well, I did do one thing last summer that was really cool, and I loved the way that it worked out. It was a total experiment. I had the whole table full of loose parts, like the one I showed you earlier with all of the materials on the table, tons of choice. And on the first day of our writing studio experience, I invited writers to grab the material that they wanted to. I want you to make your main character, and you can use any material you wish, but I documented what they grabbed. And then I asked every single writer as they were working, why did you choose this material? And 100% of the time, they told me that they chose the material because it was one that they worked with at home. And so this, I feel comfortable with this. It really aligns with what I learned in Italy from pedagogistas there, who told me that young children know the language of clay in a way that middle schoolers have forgotten. And so middle schoolers will throw it at each other, and they'll play with it and mess around with it. And it's easy to get frustrated, but what they taught me was, you're far better off making space during the day where they can mess around with that stuff for non-academic purposes and let them like get that energy out, because they're trying to remember how to play with it. They're embarrassed. Like if I watch it, every single time I work with 8th graders and I give them Play-Doh, they make two things. They make a snake with it, or they make a ball with it. When I give Play-Doh to kindergartners, they are making far more intricate things right out of the gate. And it's because they remember how to use that material. So sometimes that comfort level is really important. So the first day I let them choose. And then the second day I asked them to recreate their character, but I gave them only magazines, and they had to like create a collage. And I wanted to see how they would work with paper. The third day I gave them only paint chips, and they had to rebuild their character with paint chips from the hardware store. And it was fascinating to not only see how their frustration level shifted, but also how their critical thinking sort of shifted as well, and the quality of the questions they were asking, and also the ideas that different materials gave them. Each material had them adding different ideas to their written drafts that I didn't expect. And it was because the material actually generated the idea. And so I remember this kid had a feather. We went on a walk outside and they collected natural elements. So he had this feather, and he added that, he used it as a tree. And I said, why did you choose a feather for the tree? And he said, because the tree, like it was a pine tree, but the needles were so soft. And he goes, they were feather soft. And then he goes, oh, I'm going to put that in my draft. And so oftentimes writers will have an idea, and they will go to the table and they will pick materials that align with the idea. But so often they don't have an idea. And when they go to the table, the materials generate the idea, and the materials generate the details. So if you can get them to then label, and then stretch those labels into sentences and then, use transcription. Sometimes I find that I have to use transcription. If you listen to Devin, there's no way his hand was going to keep up with that story that he was telling me. He needed to go back and be able to listen to it over and over again. Yesterday, I was working with a teacher just an hour from home, and I'm doing curriculum mapping work, design work there, not mapping, design. So she just got the Make Writing Starter set because she subscribes to my newsletter. We're not doing that work in her district right now. And she came racing in the room before we even started yesterday. And she said, you have to see how proud my students are of the writing they created because we use those materials, those loose parts. And I said, we haven't even talked about that here. How did you know that I even do that work? And she said, oh, I subscribed to your newsletter and I used the Make Writing Starter set and I just tried it. She said, but it never occurred to me that they're really proud of the complexity of the story that they wrote. And if I would have asked them to do it with paper first, they never would have chosen those words. They would have chosen a completely different idea. In fact, one that was easier for them to pull off. And so that was very fascinating. The materials thing is something that I will probably make a lifetime of studying. So while I can't give you answers about the right way to go, I can say, start with what you know you can sustain and will not totally blow the whole thing up, right? But pay attention to how writers use them and then add things strategically based on your learning targets and also what you're discovering. Two bits of advice that Diane Cashin actually shared with me, and she's phenomenal. If you don't follow Diane Cashin, I'll drop her name here. She is on Twitter and she teaches in Toronto. She is an amazing human being who generously shares all of her work all of the time. She's just wonderful. But anyway, Diane once said to me, pre-cuts. She has a whole blog post on not using pre-cuts. So loose parts play in a writer's workshop doesn't look like handing kids a pre-cut template of a turkey and then having them glue like little balls or cereal onto it so that every kid has the same turkey. That's crafts, that's arts and crafts, and there's a place for that. But the big thing with loose parts play is that it's open-ended. And that's the other tip she gave me, is to communicate to the children that this is not art, that the loose parts are not precious. We're not going to keep them. They get put away each day. They're there to help you produce writing that you're really proud of. And so we don't glue things down. We don't staple them. We don't paint on another loose part. Diane always says, let the loose parts live to play another day. And that was a really important piece of feedback that she gave me. Other questions? Anything?
Hector's one of our wonderful fourth grade. Are you still doing fourth grade, Hector?
Hi there.
Second grade now. Second grade now.
Sounds like you've done a little of this work. Did you want to say anything? He's at Vista and Vapa.
Yeah, everybody interprets this differently too.
Yeah.
And so I've been hesitant to be the voice when people try to put me, because I'm literally just learning beside everyone else. I just share it as I go.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the app, the Art Institutes, and Lori presents this roller coaster book, and it's a book with no text, just a bunch of pictures, but the kids look at the picture and develop dialogue.
Oh,
So,
beautiful.
yeah, and that approach was it's really good for the upper grades. Lower grades would be a little bit more difficult, but a big fan of showing pictures, and sometimes pictures motivate.
Postcards are really powerful too. You can get gorgeous sets on different websites where they've curated postcards where the visuals are just stunning and really compelling, like things that you wouldn't expect to see. And that they can be really powerful too. Wordless images are great story.
And I've taken a few chances with kids taking pictures with an iPad, maybe 3 or 4 pictures, and then just, okay, go. And they present a picture and tell a story. Next picture, tell a story. Okay, now let's use what you said and let's try to word it and put it in a sentence. Yeah.
It's messy.
It is messy. Writing is messy, and it's a process.
It really is. It really is. And I think as I get older and less afraid, I think it's one of the things I might like best about it, where when I was like 30, oh my goodness, there's no way. I was always worried that it wouldn't work. I was going to make a mistake. My administrator was going to be upset with me. And now I realize that even the stuff that I was doing when I was following the rules was not working. I was making mistakes, and administrators were sometimes still upset with me. So I cannot say enough about documentation. Pedagogical documentation is like, that's the only silver bullet I ever hand anyone, which is document what you are seeing and hearing. Even if you don't know what you're looking for, take pictures, jot notes down, audio record your conferences, and then at some point go back through that stuff and look for trends. And those trends, the whole thing for me started because I had done a documentation project in my writing studio. I had no designs on using loose parts. I had no idea what any of this was. I was documenting resistance, perceived resistance. And I had 900 photos on my living room floor, and I was coding the data. I was looking at the photo, coming up with a concept that I saw in the photo, like kids were standing up or they were walking around or they were making something, right? When I had given them choice. So I had all of these photos and all of these codes or concepts all over the floor. And my husband was on the porch. He was reading the New York Times, and there was an article about the first Maker Faire in San Francisco. In the article, it was that year. And he walked in the house and he said, all of this stuff that I'm reading in this article is what's all over the floor in our living room right now. You really need to read this. And I'm like, what is it called? He's like, it's called a Maker Faire. Do you know what this maker stuff is? And this was way before Maker Ed was like even a breath on the wind in a big conversation in my world. And it's because I did documentation. I didn't know what I was going to discover. That's how it came about, was I really just documented, and I took the loose parts of my documentation and I clustered them, and it started to reveal findings that were really powerful. So I don't know how this will work for all of you, but I hope that today was inspiring and a little bit of practical ideas that you can take back and try. But I can't say it loudly enough that documentation is really where you're going to find your own answers and your own inspiration for your kids. So thanks for having me here today. And I am on social all the time. So if you have other questions and you want to have a smaller conversation, don't hesitate to reach out, because I'm happy to talk with you more. Hector.
Yes, since I don't know if a lot of you guys are Cal State students, but Dr. Wood is also helping us with podcasting. So we're doing, kiddos are second graders, right? Second graders are doing little interviews of their grandparents or someone from a different generation.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And they're having to come up with their DJ names and their studios and develop dialogue like they're professional radio hosts. And so it's just another option if you Cal State San Marcos students, hit up Dr. Wood. She's really exploring this podcast thing.
She's doing, this is a lot of her students. I really want to thank Angela for her inspiration today. I highly encourage you to follow her on Twitter and Instagram. She is very generous, sharing. Sign up for her newsletter. Her Instagram will tell you how, because she's always sending out whatever she's working on. She'll send you.
I did poetry in motion. I did a stop motion starter kit a couple of weeks ago. And then this morning I got up to make a poetry in motion unit lesson and the support resources for teachers who want to try that for National Poetry Month. So I try to send lessons, units, and the tools so that you can just drop them right in and use them or adapt them however you like. I share everything through Google, and you can adapt it however you want.
Yeah. And it's what she's creating, and
I'm using it in my studio this summer.
Yeah, great. So, and look for her new book. In the chat, there's a feedback form. I hope you'll take a couple of minutes to fill out the feedback form. And then there's a link if you would like a certificate. It's a Google form. Just fill that out and we will send you a certificate for today. But I want to thank Angela so much for her inspiration, and for all of you for being here on a Saturday. It was great to see you all. And we'll hang out for a couple minutes if anybody has any other questions or comments. But enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
My question, the affinity mapping, that link says
Hold on one second. You probably can't view it because I just did a search and it's not in a folder.
It says
that I
no
can
result.
share. Okay, hold on one sec.
Thanks, Scott, for hanging out to let us know.
Yeah.
Thanks for your generous sharing. Thanks, Susan.
So
Give me
affinity
one second.
mapping,
Just got to dig for a minute to find the folder I want to share with you.
affinity mapping is like the latest, greatest people are using out there.
It's been around. I used to do it with my middle school
Okay.
kids. I did it a little different. I had them start with what do you already know? And then we clustered them on Post-its. And then they went and did research. And then we added them to the sort of groupings that we made. There's lots of ways you can adapt it. Yeah.
Yep.
Have you done anything with that, Julie? You're on mute. You're on mute, Julie.
I can see how this so beautifully ties in with that interdisciplinary approach we want for history, social science instruction, but and also just multiple modalities of expressing the content in it. So I was really inspired. Thank you so much. This was great. From an old lady teacher, I've been teaching a long time, but boy, did I get in something new that I'm going to put into practice.
Glad to hear that.
And so that's the sign of good PD development, is if you leave and then you go in and make changes immediately. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Julie, you're so
I'm
good
so
about
glad.
being open to new ideas and yeah,
Oh, well, that's our job.
that's right.
Our job is to stay current. Thank
That's
you
right.
very much, Lori and
Thanks,
Angela.
Lori.
And it was so neat to see all of my students. So
All
thank
right.
you. Bye.
Here's the link for you. I
Uh-oh.
just created a new album.
I'm not leaving until I get a link.
Okay. Hold on one sec. You should know my dogs are going to come flying in this
Oh,
room.
good.
very
We want to
soon.
see the dogs.
Oh, no.
They're like,
They're
you've been
covered
away
in
from us
mud,
for
so my
too
husband's
long.
keeping them outside. All right, that should work for you. Let me know.
Okay, there we go. Got it.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
works.
Help?
Yeah.
Now I can leave.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. Yeah.
And I
Thank you.
also think, Scott, if you hold on one second, there's a video of me doing this because I recorded it for my students this year. Let me just find it for you.
Listen, I'm super picky and very honest person. This was an absolutely fantastic. I mean, so if it was another 2 hours, I would sit here for another 2 hours. I was
Wow.
absolutely,
Glad.
High
Thank
praise.
you.
it was so tangible. The videos that you showed and the way you presented the information, it was just tangible. I mean, it all illuminated immediately in my brain. So
Well, there's this one too. I'm so glad. You might like this too.
Today's lesson, you'll
Sorry.
be able to say.
This is just I did lessons last year that were video recorded. You might like this approach too, Scott. It's called Note Sketch Paraphrase, and I shared it because students were having a hard time paraphrasing when they were making notes for research. This process works really well.
Yes,
so you might like
paraphrasing
that
is a
too.
challenge.
And there's other stuff. If you follow me on social, just like nudge me there and I can send you some other things once I have time to dig for
Yeah,
it.
there's a ton on her Instagram.
yeah, I just followed you on Instagram and also Twitter.
Yeah, I will. I'll put up a special post in those places for you with some other resources so that you can dig into a lot of, because there's a ton of stuff that you might really like.
The note sketch paraphrasing is having a hard time opening,
Opening.
or the YouTube one. Yeah, they're both YouTube. Okay, no.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
why
Both
opened
the
it.
same video, I think.
Yeah,
Hold on.
I opened it.
You opened it, okay?
Yeah.
I'll try
By the
again.
end of
Let me
I can
see.
paraphrase and use content specific
Yep.
knowledge. Yeah.
But I have it in a lot of different forms, so I'll put it all
Writing's not
together
that
for you in a different
There
way
it goes. I
too,
got
so
it
you-
open.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay in touch. Let me know what
Morning.
else you might want because I have tons of stuff and I'm happy to help you more. Anything that I use in my own work, I'm happy to share with other people.
You're very generous that way.
No, do
Thank
you
you,
know
Becky.
what? I lose nothing by doing that. I only make more friends and learn more. So it's not a problem.
Yeah. Again, thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much. It's been
afternoon.
fantastic. You too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. All right.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Lori, do you need me to hang around or are we all
Nope, we're
set?
good.
Okay,
Okay.
have a good afternoon.
Thanks, you too. Thank you. It was
Bye-bye.
wonderful.